Instead of trying to change the white man in your mind, make you accept us, we change the mind of the black man and make him accept himself. And as soon as he accepts himself, he'll solve his own problem. He won't be trying to force himself into your factory and into your bedroom and into your kitchen.
With no education, you have neo-colonialism instead of colonialism, like you got in Africa 9, like you got in Haiti. So what we're talking about is there has to be educational program. That's very important. As a matter of fact, we so important for us that a person has to go through 6 weeks of our political education before he can consider himself a member of the party, able to even run down ideology for the party. Why? Because if they don't have the education, then they're nowhere. You dig what I'm saying? They're nowhere because they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. You might get people caught up in an emotionalist movement. You understand me? You might get them caught up in because they're poor and they want something. And then if they're not educated, they want more. And before you know it, they'll be capitalists. And before you know it, we have Negro imperialists.
Peace and Black Power families, Brother Agyei Tyehimba from Harlem Liberation School, where we teach Black people to wake up, clean up, and stand up, in the words of one of our beloved Jegnas and ancestors, Brother Malcolm X. Family, a few quick things. Today I'm going to be reading an article that I wrote that kind of outlines the recent events around the African American Studies Department at Syracuse University. But before I get into that, very quick things. Number one, if you have not done so yet, you might want to cop this book. Go right to Amazon, type in my name, and you'll see the 5 different books I've written. One of them is Leadership, Philosophy, Ethics, and Practice. I think that many of the issues that are going on in our community obviously stem from white supremacy, but can be remedied and resolved and addressed effectively through strong leadership. Leadership is not something that just naturally happens. It has to be cultivated and developed, right? And so this book that I wrote on leadership helps us to understand some of the very basic things. It's not a very deeply scholarly book. It's not meant to be. It's supposed to help us understand the basics of leadership, how a leader thinks, the difference between a leader and an organizer, and all these different things. So cop that book on leadership from Amazon.com, or if you want, you can get it directly from me, in which I would get a larger percentage of the money spent on it. Also, family, as a quick update, Baba Daruba bin Wahad, one of our former political prisoners for 19 years, one of the New York City Black Panther Party leaders, and one of the co-founders of the Black Liberation Army. You might have saw a broadcast we had with Brother Daruba, and we talked about the fact that he's dealing with cancer in a very serious stage, I believe 4th stage. And his medical costs are exorbitant. And he kind of travels back and forth between Africa and the States. He goes to Africa for his treatment. He says he gets the better medical treatment in Africa. So Harlem Liberation School started a GoFundMe campaign to be able to generate funds so that our brother can live his life with some degree of dignity and peace and not have to worry about how he's going to eat, how he's going to take care of his medical expenses and transportation costs. You know, it's a $10,000 campaign. We've raised almost $7,000. And you can certainly go right to GoFundMe, type in my name, and you'll see the campaign will come up. Support Dhoruba bin Wahab. Please support family with whatever you can. We've had people that have given us $5 all the way to $500. And every bit counts and every bit helps. And I can tell you that Baba Dhoruba is very grateful. Everyone that donates gets a typewritten note from either he or myself or both of us, just to show our gratitude. We have to take good care of those who take good care of us and those who stick their neck out for us, because as we know, that's a minority of our population, right? So we have to do diligence and do right by those who do right by us. Having said that, got a sneeze coming on, I think. Excuse me. Having said that, I want to, of course, remind you all to support the movement, family. You know, if you have not already, subscribe to our channel. If you're watching on YouTube, there should be a red button to the lower right of the screen, and you just click right on it and subscribe. We have about 1,500 subscribers, but when I look at the analytics, I see that 20 to 30,000 people view our videos. So if just 10% of those people subscribe, we have a much deeper and larger subscriber base, and we'd have more power to reach more people. And that's what this is about in the digital age. We want to reach more of our people with what we believe is relevant and important information for Black people, Africans, and new Africans that want to be free, right? That said, family, you might have heard from our channel or from another source what's going on at Syracuse University, which is the university where I did my undergraduate studies. When I was there at Syracuse, we fought tooth and nail. I was president of the Student African American Society, and we took an entire year, an entire academic year, September, I guess you could say, to about March, April. We did negotiations in April to address the fact that the department had no chairperson. The MLK library ceiling had caved in and it had destroyed books and artwork. We didn't have a librarian, family. It wasn't, the building was not set up in a way where it was accessible to people with disabilities. It was just a lot of issues with the department. They didn't have enough professors. They couldn't teach enough courses. It was bad, family. So we fought. And because of that fight, we had 13 demands that the university agreed to. So you can imagine that myself and others that fought hard for this department, how we felt when we found out that now in 2024, the department still has some of the same issues that we were fighting back in 1988, 89, and even before that, right? So we mounted a Black alumni campaign, and we put pressure on the university, family. This time we weren't taking over buildings and holding administrators hostage and disrupting their meetings like we did when we were young people, right? When you get older and you're middle-aged and above, you fight a little differently. We fight more politically and economically. And I am happy to say that we had a good outcome, but the struggle continues. And so in this particular Harlem Liberation School broadcast, I'm going to be just reading this article. It won't take much of your time, but this information I think you need to know. Because I know that all of us will not go to LinkedIn and to my account and read the article. I'm trying to do it this way so that it gives greater access to the community. All right, I'm going to share the screen so you can see it as I read it. Hold on, family, please. And right now, you should be able to see on your screen African American Studies at Syracuse University, the struggle continues. And my article begins. After launching a relentless campaign of targeted calls, emails, and videos to university administrators, Black alumni of Syracuse University won an important battle in the war to protect and develop the Department of African American Studies. In less than a month, we demanded that the department have a chairperson before the end of spring semester 2024, and we were victorious. The department now has an interim chair. Now, there's links in the article I'm not going to go to, family, because it would take too long. But that's showing you who the interim chair is. That particular link right here. The article goes on to read, but all is not well. AAS faculty complained that the university appointed the interim chair without their input. This represents a continued cycle of disrespect and disregard for African American Studies faculty. In truth, our victory is a nuanced one. Any true victory will only be assured when we complete 3 tasks. We need to identify and address outstanding issues affecting the department. 2, we should take time to understand the unique history of African American Studies departments in the United States and what such departments represent to white universities and Black America at large. Number 3, we should change the discussion from the department's survival and maintenance to developmental questions. For example, what is the department's vision for itself? How do we position the department to attract applicants to Syracuse University, much like the Newhouse School of Public Communications? How do we help the department recruit and retain promising new scholars, innovative research? How do we facilitate intellectual diversity while maintaining a department committed to the original mission and beneficiaries of African American studies? In other words, Black people and Black issues. What can we do to continue and expand the department's traditional role of providing mentorship to students? How do we cultivate meaningful relationships and activities between African American Studies faculty, students, and Black people living in Syracuse, New York? Concerning the first task, the department's immediate priority was to appoint a chairperson. An academic department cannot initiate hiring and promotions or make curriculum and budgetary decisions without a chairperson. Depriving an academic department of a chair starves the department, diminishes its capacity, and paves the way for its gradual decline and eventual erasure. The interim chair, James Rollins Jr., has an appointment for 2 years. African American Studies faculty will likely work with him to provide departmental stability. They will probably bring closure to some of their outstanding issues, which, according to African American Studies faculty, include hiring 12 part-time instructors to accommodate faculty that left and those going on leave next year, hiring a librarian for the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library, discussing pay increases, tenure, and promotions for faculty. Concerning the second task, Africana Studies, Black Studies, Pan-African Studies, and African American Studies, while different in scope and content, all research the history, culture, and politics of African Americans and/or members of the African diaspora. Like similar departments across the United States, Syracuse University's Department of African American Studies was born from Black student protests during the Black Power movement. Inspired largely by Malcolm X and his call for culturally relevant and liberatory education, Black college students, faculty, and community members, all the way from San Francisco State University to Cornell University, demanded what they called at that time Black Studies, taught by Black professors and activists. These Black students helped to create an entirely new discipline. However, people like Carter G. Woodson, William Leo Hansberry, W.E.B. Du Bois, J.A. Rogers, and John Henrik Clarke helped to develop its intellectual foundations decades earlier. Please understand that white universities, Syracuse included, housed Black studies departments reluctantly, resentfully, and regrettably. They never wanted them, they merely tolerate them now, and they have worked to sabotage and compromise them since their inception. Holla if you hear me. African American Studies is the Haiti and Nat Turner Rebellion of academia. It's a Black liberation project that struck fear in the heart of white supremacy and thus attracted eternal white vitriol and backlash. These insights are crucial for those of us who seek to support the department. This knowledge outlines the department's historical lineage. This critical historical memory helps us define our relationship to the university and what the nature of our political struggle should be due to that relationship. Now, my observant readers will note that the way universities view and treat African American studies mirrors the way they view and treat African Americans. Hopefully, we all appreciate that African American studies represents more than an assortment of Black faculty and courses. It is an institutional expression of and incubator for Black political voice, agency, and intellectual resistance. In short, such departments were and still are threats to the very underpinnings of white supremacy. Lest we forget, some of today's most powerful leaders of industry, including education, are the ideological descendants of yesterday's segregationist politicians, colonial administrators, and apologists for white supremacy. Others are not as fundamentalist or extremists, but they still view Black people as lazy and entitled victims who play the race card and still view Black people, and avoid hard work or accountability. We must understand this historical and psychological dynamic if we truly want to empower the Department of African American Studies at Syracuse University or anywhere in this country. I know some of you believe America is post-racial, but even a cursory examination of the news proves otherwise. Alumni wishing to be effective in this fight should begin by acknowledging that we are in a fight. This is a fight, family. This is not a tea party, right? Given the background we just reviewed, the Black alumni role in relationship to Syracuse University should be oppositional, not acquiescent. We cannot be the university's lapdogs when political integrity demands we be pit bulls for the department, Black undergraduate students, and the larger Black Syracuse community. To my more conciliatory readers, please don't forget, Syracuse University created this adversarial relationship by making promises it did not keep regarding African American studies, by treating Black students and faculty with disrespect and indifference, and by starving the Department of African American Studies of necessary resources and support for several decades. Far from being peculiar, this behavior is customary, and it characterizes the nature of our relationship with Syracuse University from day one. Because I'm not even going to get into, family, how the Black athletes like Ernie Davis and Jim Brown and some of them back in the 50s and 60s had to live off campus. They wouldn't even let the Black athletes who brought in money live on campus, right? And Black students as well, who weren't athletes. Back to the article. Regarding part 1 of the third task, identifying the long-term needs of the department, I already outlined some possible ideas earlier in this article. I will add this reminder. Long-term developmental change can only occur through communication with the African American Studies faculty to determine their needs and their vision. Alumni have limited powers in this regard. While alumni and student contributions are important, the department itself must do its part by exercising visionary, fearless, and proactive leadership that will, as the great Ella Baker said, quote, do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. Concerning the second part of the last task I outlined, planning additional phases of activism. Please remember, family, that all skin folk ain't kinfolk. We should be savvy enough to assume some parties, including administrators, students, faculty, or alumni, have disingenuous or self-serving interests. Outlining general goals and needs and providing historical context, as I've done in this article, is one thing. Discussing specific strategies or tactics in a public article is irresponsible. I'm not going to do that. What I will share, however, are a few historical facts. The Student African American Society known as SAS, fought in 1968 to establish the Department of African American Studies. SAS fought to support and develop the department throughout the 70s and 80s, culminating in the famous 13-point document in 1989. The Not Again SU movement reinvigorated the struggle in 2019. Yet 5 years later, we are fighting again. So the conclusion is clear. An interim chair is just the beginning. The struggle continues. And family, this is very important because I think, when you have struggles like this, you get all types of people involved. And it's very important that the alum, let me put this ticker up real quick if I can find it. Give me 1 second, family. We want to make sure those who want to support and donate to the work we do, that's the ticker on the bottom will tell you how to do that through Cash App. It's very important, family. We understand that when we say we have a victory, that victory operates in degrees. So the victory is we got an interim chairperson for the African American Studies Department at Syracuse University. That's important, but the department has more needs. So that's an initial victory. It's a partial victory because the department had no say in choosing the interim chair. It was kind of forced upon them, right? This is no reflection on who the person is that's the chair. It's a reflection on how the university operates and gets down. It's kind of disrespectful to just tell a department, this will be your interim chair, right? The department is the best knower of the leadership it needs, correct? And you would think that they would want the department to choose from someone within their own department. But that's another story for another time. The other thing that's important, as highlighted in the article, you got to know the history of Black studies. There's some of us, family, that we're really, and I'm talking about my beloved nationalist community, that don't get it. Why are you begging the white man for Black studies? Why are you protesting to the white man? Why do you work? Why do you drive his cars? Why do you spend his money? Why do you go to his banks? Why do you wear his clothes? Like, stop it. We're colonized people, family. So what this means is that we don't own the means of production, as the socialists would say. It means that just about every area of human activity, they dominate. Why? Because we're in the belly of the beast. We're their colonial subjects, and we need to be honest about that and clear about that. So that means that in any given day, we make compromised decisions. Right? Yeah. They sell us most of the goods. They sell us most of our food. They put up most of our television programming. We are held accountable whether we want to agree with the government, whether we recognize the validity of the government or not. The fact is, if we do something that breaks their law, they're going to hold us accountable to their law, which includes fines, which includes imprisonment. So my point in raising this is to say to my nationalist community, let us not be so caught up in our ideological framework that we fail to see the world as it is, and we fail to adjust our reasoning, that we fail to be reasonable and rational. While we are under their captivity and while we are colonized by them, we're going to have to use some of their tools. Yes, we're going to have to. Some of us will work in some of their businesses, drive their cars, right? Apply for licenses that they dispense for firearms training and their degrees and all types of stuff. And we should not be embarrassed by that. We're colonized, right? We should do whatever we need to do to be free. Black studies departments, as the article outlines, come about from a history of struggle. These are young people who were touched by the teachings of Brother Malcolm. Particularly, a lot of people, but particularly Brother Malcolm. If you know the history of SNCC and how they make the transition from being this kind of nonviolent, direct action, interracial organization to becoming an all-black, a lot more nationalistic organization. This is Malcolm, man. This is the impact of Malcolm. And so these young people, particularly the college students and the high school students, said, when Malcolm got killed in February of 1965, a lot of millions of black people around the country and world said, you know what? We're going to put into place, operationalize the ideas that he didn't get a chance to complete because they killed him. And so they took things like wearing dashikis and changing their names to African names because Malcolm was pushing this idea, kind of a cultural nationalist idea of reclaiming our African identity. This is why organizations like the Black Panther Party and the Republic of New Africa arise, because they're taking what Malcolm said about nationhood and revolution, right? And maybe even overthrowing the government even. And this issue of getting land and this issue of sovereignty. They're taking Malcolm seriously and they're trying to put these things into place. So when black students were admitted to these white universities in these large numbers for the first time, which was in the mid and late 60s, during the Black Power movement, they were coming there like, yo, we want education. We see these white boys and girls getting Greece and Rome and all types of so-called classical history. We want knowledge of Africa. We want knowledge of what Africa was like before white colonists came. We want to know about these civilizations and how they worshipped and how they grew their food and how they raised their children and how they operated as families and how they fought. We want to know after colonization, both within the continent of Africa and outside of Africa, how did our people fight back? We weren't just sitting around getting our asses whipped, family. We fought back in every historical era. There's proof of this, right? We wanted to know, how did our people, the dancers, our music, our culture, our politics, how do we organize politically? How do we organize economically? How do we organize resistance, right? How do we infiltrate their systems, take their information and tools and use it to help our people? This is, so it's the study of the history, culture, and politics of black people. History, culture, politics, that covers a lot of territory. And so when these black students came, they didn't see this as being integrationists. They weren't trying to integrate, they were trying to infiltrate. They were trying to get what they could from these universities and bring it back to their neighborhoods, family, to liberate them. And I should also say, there was a strong push that whatever they're learning should help them understand the condition they were in and help them to resolve their problems, to fight back, to liberate themselves. Not just sitting there taking tests. They had relationships with the larger community. So the first Black Studies departments, it wasn't all PhD degreed professors. Some of the professors were actually activists in the community. That's right. Some of the professors were African intellectuals that may not have had doctorate degrees, but had a voluminous knowledge of our history, culture, and politics. So this was a whole different time, and Black Studies was a whole different creature. It's become, in some ways, some of these departments have become very much like the traditional white academic disciplines. You don't see, from some of them, you don't see that connection to the larger black community where these universities are housed. Some of these professors at some of these colleges never leave the campus to go into the larger community, right? And experience the larger community, maybe except to go to church, right? Or go shopping for food. So it's important you know the history so you can understand why this is such a big deal. An attack on African American studies is not just an attack on the black students who go to those classes on college campuses around the country. It is in fact part of a nationwide movement to reduce and erase and cancel, as the young people say, black political voice and black political resistance, in the same way that they are banning books by black authors, and in the same way that certain states are prohibiting teachers from teaching black history or African American studies in high school. So it's important that you see the connection here and why many of us decided to fight, right? So That's it, family. I read the article. I hope you found it useful. The struggle continues at Syracuse. They have an interim chairperson for the African American Studies Department. We want to thank some of you who called, some of you in the community who didn't even go to Syracuse. Took it upon yourselves. You saw our videos and some of my broadcasts, and you called you called the university, and you spoke to the Dean of Arts and Sciences, and you spoke to the provost and the chancellor's office, and you said, we want this department to have a chairperson. So we thank you. Members of the large community, we thank the Black alum who were part of this fight, but we also encourage you, do not think the fight is over just because they now have a chair. There's a lot more that has to happen to make that department a state-of-the-art department. And with that said, family, we thank you for watching. We thank you for your support. And you know what I always say, that if we organize, if we listen to Brother Malcolm, we wake up, we clean up, and we stand up, no matter what these people throw our way, right? We will win. Peace. And Black Power family, don't forget, myself and Brother Youssef will be starting our new iteration of the Black Power Cipher, me and him. Black Power Cipher 3.0 is coming out, starting our first episode May 11th at 2 p.m. on Saturday. So every second Saturday of every month, we're going to have our Black Power Cipher with me and Brother Youssef. And sometimes we'll have guests. If there are any topics you would like us to address, that is Harlem Liberation School, please, family, leave those comments in this video. Thank you, and peace.